Kevin Powell is here. Yes, our sis did an amazing job and looked beautiful doing it. Uh, Listening to her sing it, I feel even uh, more so that it should not have been in that space. And Jay Z, yes, Jay Z has a contract with the NFL, but we don't have a contract with the NFL. Like I feel like, oh, Jay Z's there, so we're there. Rihanna's there, so we're not there. Did y'all get a check? I ain't get a check. I saw Jay Z and Blue. They good. But one person getting a check does not mean all of us are free. Kevin Powell, thoughts and prayers. Hip hop.
Awesome.
Nothing? Yeah, thoughts and prayers.
I mean, I loved her rendition. It's interesting because I do think that we deserve to be in spaces. I'm thinking about it like that, but I also think that it can't be just that. Like I said, the symbolic gestures are not enough without real power. I keep thinking about you mentioned slavery earlier, and so did Dr. Carr. Shout out to Dr. Carr, as always. Do we understand what real freedom is? That's what it really boils down to me. What is real freedom for us? I don't want to have some sort of symbolic victory and I don't actually own anything. It's back to ownership, 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 and I think that what has happened in this modern era, post civil rights era, is that we've had a few folks dangled in front of us as models of great success. But the masses of Black people are still struggling. And I'm talking about middle class and working class poor people in this country. And it's hypocritical for us to celebrate Dr. King's birthday in January or Black History Month and act as if the part of the narrative that we've had to have in our countries, in our history in this country, is what does freedom, what does power really look like for all of us. And I think until all of us are like you said, where's my check or my opportunity, then all of us are not free, all of us not empowered. And even like I'm looking at now the 50th anniversary of hip hop this year, Karen,
Yep.
it was working class Black folks, African Americans, West Indians, and Latinx folks who created hip hop together here in New York City in the context of African American culture. We're clear about that, which is an African art form. That's where the hip hop is, just like jazz and everything else before it. But I'm watching people charging extraordinary prices for some of the exhibits that are going up around the country, charging money for people who created hip hop can't even afford to go to the exhibit. The same poor people that Dr.
Mm.
King told us not to forget at the end of his life. Let's not forget he was organizing a poor people's campaign. Let's not forget he was talking about economic justice and empowerment. Let's not forget that he was working with sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee, working class people, the same people that he was telling us not to forget are now being priced out of some of the hip hop at 50 and hip hop turns 50 and hip hop is 50 celebrations because it's not really for all the people. And so what
It's
we have to be very mindful of as Black people is your value system for Black people, or is your value system given to you by someone else, which doesn't have anything to do with your own people. And I don't think we should ever be apologetic about that. I mean, I'm a part of the human family, the human race without question, but I'm an African. I'm a Black person. I'm a Black person. It's both. And I represent both. And so when I spend my dollars, I'm thinking to myself, okay, is my Black barber, my Black dentist, my Black doctor, Black handy person, a Black house, whatever it is that, I'm like, make sure this money is circulating inside of my community and I'm supporting people that are in my community because other communities do that. You can go to any, any city and you'll see here's the Italian American this, and here's the Jewish American that, and the Irish American this, and every city has a China. Many of the major cities have Chinatowns. No one's apologizing for supporting their communities, but because of the fear that racism has planted in so many of us, spiritually and psychologically, we'll be apologetic. You know what I'm saying, about supporting our own communities, or we'll go out of our way to say, well, I'm inclusive. Well, you're inclusive by the very fact that everything that you've created, Black people in this country, not just Black History Month in February, but 365 days a year, is included in every aspect of the DNA of this country. You were diversity before the term even existed.
oof. Kevin Powell is here. 866-801-8255. His latest book, Grocery Shopping with My Mother, a must-have in your library. I got a signed copy. I appreciate it, and I bought one as well. So
Thank you so
thank you.
much.
Yeah,
Thank you
because
so
that's
much.
what support looks like. Yeah, I know you're gonna give me one, but I'm also, going to take care of it. That's $20, if that. All of that. The Dove is what he was known as, founding member of De La Soul, one of the greatest hip hop groups of all time before it got commercialized, before it got sold out, before they started taking the coin and changing the message. These brothers were talking about things that mattered, right? Things that empowered. Did you know? Because I know you were at Vibe for a long time. doing all of those amazing cover pieces. Did you know De La Soul? Did you know
I
this
wrote
brother?
about them. I've seen. I saw De La Soul perform live. I've written about them. I was actually commissioned to write the liner notes for the first album, 3 Feet High and Rising, at the 50th anniversary of the album, which was like 2004. But what people don't realize, their first album, which was geniusly put together by them and Prince Paul, shout out to Prince Paul, great producer, great DJ, all of that. It had over 120 samples. And remember, in the late 80s, early 90s, a lot of artists didn't understand, what the sampling world was going to do as they were sampling records. And so we couldn't put the album, they couldn't put the reissue of the album out. And the irony of Trugoy, aka Plug 2, aka the Dove, dying this year, is that they finally got their music back, ownership of their music back, and they were about to deal all this stuff with the music this year, which is a big deal because they were in a battle for a long time. As some people know, with Tommy Boy Records, you know what I'm saying? Back to the issue of ownership and who owns your masters, and think about even the term
That
that we
is even called Masters.
yeah.
It's
Yeah, that is even
crazy.
called masters. You feel what I'm saying? Just like in sports, the team's owners, the owners of I mean, come on. I mean, do we realize what we're saying? Words have power, but the beauty of De La Soul, I remember they came to Vibe magazine in the early 90s when Vibe first started. And I said, do y'all realize, y'all come out of the tradition of like Nikki Giovanni and Sonia Sanchez and the Last Poets and Baraka and Langston and I remember they're like, nah, we just did what we felt. But that's the genius of Black people. Even if you don't actually know what's in your DNA, it's in your DNA subconsciously, to create this kind of art. Do you feel what I'm saying? And I mean, De La Soul were masterful with wordplay. They were masterful with their music samples and music references. They took sampling and made it into a whole nother art form. I just, and they're one of the few groups that has lasted through all of this. Out of the three, I was probably closest, and I'm still closest to Brother Maceo, brother DJ Maceo. But I mean, I love all of them, man. And I got the news literally right around the time Shirley Ralph, ironically, was doing the Black National Anthem at the Super Bowl, and I just gasped when I heard,
Mm.
And it's funny because a week before the Grammys had the hip hop tribute, which I'm sure you talked about, and I remember seeing Pasta News, Plug One, performing up there by himself, and I was thinking, like, where's Trugoy at? Then I went and looked. I remember he was sick and he's had heart issues. So back to your piece about we got to take care of ourselves, y'all, no matter what. And some things are genetic. We know that. But I just, for me as a Black man, specifically for a second, if I could say, because I saw a lot of brothers posting about it, brothers in their 40s and 50s, we're fatigued at this point about the number of Black males who are not making it out of their 40s, making it to 50, making it beyond 50 something. It is forcing you to think about your own mortality in ways we couldn't even imagine, And I think it was hard for us too as Black males because we're like, if it ain't, what happened to Tyree Nichols, or George Floyd, and if we're fortunate enough to make it past 1821, now, we don't know. It can come from so many different angles. I know the same thing exists for sisters without question, so I'm not going to dismiss that at all. But I can tell you some of the conversations I've been having with Black males privately is that it's really, really forcing a lot of us to look at ourselves, like our mortality, and what is all of this where brothers are not. I mean, he was 54,
Well, I mean, I'm listening to this book called Inflamed, and I'm
Mm,
going to keep talking about it. I'm going to start pulling clips from it. But
yes,
it talks about the impact of stress,
yes,
the epigenetic impact of stress. And
yes,
yes, so if you're predisposed to something, but we
yeah,
don't ever think about the predisposition of stress and what it does in terms of inflammation, what it does in terms of our ability to recover, what it does in terms of our being on heightened alert and the chemicals that are released in our system
yeah,
being triggered and the trauma that we experience when we see Tyree Nichols get killed or George Floyd. 4 years are taken off of our lives, right? That's how deep the impact is. So that means we have to be extra vigilant in staying healthy, right? Like we can't then participate if you're predisposed. Like my parents were telling me I was going to get high blood pressure because it runs in our family. I was like, okay, let me search how to not get high blood. Oh, okay, so I got to do these things. All right, let me cut out red meat. Let me do this. Let me exercise. Let me,
mhm,
like there are things you can no sodas. There are things you can do knowing that we are predisposed epigenetically to having this fight or flight constant. And for Black men, it must be. I mean, it's for all of us. So I'm not even going to do that. But
I mean,
yes.
to your point, Sister Karen, I mean, I'm at a place now in my life where if I'm in situations, it could be a business situation, is what I'm dealing with right now, or a love relationship, I'm happy there, thank God. or even if it's certain family members, if there's a lot of stress coming out of this situation, I got to keep it pushing, because I'm like, man, I already know what I got to do with my own life. I don't need to be taking on your issues. And I mean, I'm at a point now where I walk away from money if I'm like, this is not healthy for me, because this could actually kill me. The stress of dealing
That's
with
right.
this just to make some coins. Nah, man, I can make coins in another way where it's less stressful than this, because, outside of my home, what I'm saying? Once I step out that door, anything can happen as a Black person in America. Anything can
That's
happen
right.
to you.
That's right.